God's laws in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Holy Christian Bible, namely Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, totaling approximately 613 commandments, include directives that range from profound moral guidance to bewilderingly specific rules that leave modern readers scratching their heads. While the 10 Commandments offer a framework that at least can be construed as ethical, many of the remaining laws fall into categories that strain to fit God's divine insight or plan. These odd, funny, or ridiculous commands reveal the cultural quirks of ancient Israel rather than eternal wisdom, raising questions about why an all-knowing deity would micromanage trivial details. This essay examines the top 20 such laws, highlighting their absurdity, cultural context, and implications for understanding biblical authority. The prohibition against wearing garments of mixed fabrics in Leviticus 19 verse 19 stands as one of the most baffling. God commands that wool and linen shall not be woven together in clothing. This rule, repeated in Deuteronomy 22 verse 11, seems to prioritize fashion purity over practical concerns. Why would the creator of the universe care about thread combinations while allowing slavery? The law likely symbolized avoiding spiritual mixtures, but its application to everyday attire turns divine holiness into a wardrobe audit. Equally perplexing is the command not to boil a young goat in its mother's milk, found in Exodus 23 verse 19 and Deuteronomy 14 verse 21. This directive forms the basis for kosher separation of meat and dairy, yet its specificity defies explanation. Did God foresee cheeseburgers as a cosmic threat? Archaeological evidence suggests it countered Canaanite rituals, but elevating a culinary taboo to divine law reduces God's plan to kitchen policing. The rule against trimming the edges of beards in Leviticus 19 verse 27 adds to the grooming guidelines. Men must avoid rounding the corners of their heads or beards, possibly to distinguish Israelites from pagan priests. In a world without razors, this command enforced facial hair uniformity as a mark of covenant obedience. The idea of eternal damnation for a bad haircut underscores the law's disproportionate emphasis on appearance. Tattoos receive an outright ban in Leviticus 19 verse 28, prohibiting marks on the body for the dead or otherwise. This law aimed to separate Israel from mourning rituals of surrounding nations, but its blanket application turns skin into sacred territory. God's concern for ink over internal purity highlights a focus on external symbols rather than heart transformation. The bitter water ordeal for suspected adultery in Numbers 5:11 through 31 provides a ritual straight out of superstition. A woman accused of infidelity drinks a mixture of holy water, dust, and ink from cursed words. If guilty, her belly swells and thigh wastes. If innocent, she conceives. This divine lie detector relies on magic rather than evidence, exposing a deity more interested in theatrical justice than fairness. Not muzzling an ox while it threshes grain in Deuteronomy 25 verse 4 offers animal welfare advice that feels oddly specific. The ox must eat as it works, a humane touch amid harsher penalties. Yet why dictate barnyard etiquette while permitting human servitude? The law's narrow focus on one species ignores broader ethical inconsistencies. Levirate marriage in Deuteronomy 25 verse 5 through 10 forces a man to marry his brother's widow if she is childless, to preserve the family line. Refusal leads to public humiliation. The widow removes his sandal and spits in his face. This command prioritizes genealogy over consent, turning marriage into a familial obligation rather than a personal choice. The punishment for a woman grabbing a man's genitals during a fight in Deuteronomy 25 verse 11 through 12 demands her hand be cut off without pity. This brutal response to defending her husband reveals a legal system more concerned with male anatomy than proportional justice. The law's severity contrasts sharply with commands for mercy elsewhere. Plowing with an ox and donkey yoked together receives a ban in Deuteronomy 22 verse 10, to avoid mixing unequals. This agricultural rule extends the theme of separation, but its application to farm animals feels like divine overreach. God's plan apparently includes veterinary matchmaking. Building a parapet on your roof in Deuteronomy 22 verse 8 requires a railing to prevent falls from flat roofs common in ancient homes. This safety regulation makes practical sense for the era, but its inclusion among eternal laws turns home improvement into holy obligation. Not taking a mother bird with her young in Deuteronomy 22 verse 6 through 7 allows capturing eggs or fledglings but mandates releasing the mother. This wildlife management law promises long life for compliance, linking birdwatching ethics to longevity. The red heifer ritual in Numbers 19:1 through 10 involves slaughtering a flawless cow, burning it with cedar, hyssop, and scarlet wool, and mixing the ashes with water for purification. This complex procedure cleanses corpse contamination, but its elaborate symbolism borders on alchemy rather than divine simplicity. Fringes on garments in Deuteronomy 22 verse 12 command tassels on the corners of clothing as reminders of the laws. This fashion accessory serves as a walking mnemonic, turning wardrobe into a billboard for obedience. The command against castrating animals in Leviticus 22 verse 24 prohibits offering or eating emasculated livestock. This rule maintains reproductive integrity in sacrifices, but its extension to dinner plates feels like divine control over veterinary practices. Not eating animals that died naturally in Deuteronomy 14 verse 21 bans carrion, likely for health reasons, but allows selling it to foreigners. This double standard reveals economic pragmatism disguised as holiness. The year of Jubilee in Leviticus 25 verse 8 through 12 resets land ownership every 50 years, returning property to original families. This utopian economic reform sounds progressive, but its impracticality in a real society exposes idealistic legislation. Not sowing fields with mixed seeds in Leviticus 19 verse 19 extends the separation theme to agriculture. This farming rule prevents hybrid crops, prioritizing purity over yield in a subsistence economy. The prohibition against cross-dressing in Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 bans men and women wearing each other's clothing. This gender enforcement law reflects ancient norms, not timeless truth. Not cutting the body for the dead in Leviticus 19 verse 28 forbids mourning incisions, distinguishing Israelite grief from pagan excess. The command turns emotional expression into regulated behavior. Finally, the cities of refuge in Numbers 35:9 through 15 provide safe havens for unintentional killers, but require the avenger's death to free the fugitive. This system blends mercy with vengeance, creating a legal loophole for accidental death. These 20 laws illustrate the Torah's blend of insight and absurdity. The 10 Commandments at least can be construed as ethical, forming a code for human relationships. However, the broader 613 laws fit uneasily into categories of God's divine insight or plan, revealing human cultural artifacts rather than eternal mandates. Their oddity, from fabric rules to genital grabbing penalties, underscores the law's ancient origins, not divine perfection. Modern believers who dismiss these as fulfilled in Christ implicitly acknowledge their ridiculousness, selecting moral gems while discarding the rest. God's laws expose more about Bronze Age Israel than an omniscient deity's master plan.